Yes, a very warm welcome to everybody. And I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. You're very, very welcome to this webinar today, and I hope you are keeping very, very well. I'd like to acknowledge the people who have joined us today. I can see we have Chantal. You're most welcome, Chantal. We have Margaret Sheila is on with us today. You're very, very welcome. And we have Masala, who is here with us today. I see Kenneth is on the call with us today. We have Albert, you're very welcome. We have Nina, you're very welcome, Nina. We have Prosy, you're most welcome. We have Edith, you're very, very welcome. We have Ruth as well on the call with us today. So thank you very much for making it here today. And I see we have Lillian, you're very welcome. Duncan, Hope, Patel, Linda, and you're almost welcome. And thank you very, very much for keeping time. Dennis, Vanessa, Hussein, Harriet, Finny. And it would be nice to know where you are reaching us from. So you could kindly put that in the chat so that we see where you are from, the country, the location. It would be really, really nice as we just give our other audience a few more minutes to join us. But thank you very, very much. Okay, Masala, you're from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Good to know. Please keep them coming so that I can acknowledge, and we hope you're very well. Dennis, yes, Princeton, New Jersey. You're welcome, Dennis. We appreciate that you're here today. Yes, Lillian from Kampala, Uganda, Linda as well from Seguku in Kampala. Yes, kindly keep them coming so that we know who is in the room. Yes, Edith says she's in Kampala, Uganda as well. So it's good to have you. It's good to see you on this webinar today. So it's 5 minutes past our time. So I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you once again. And I would like for us to start. Yes, Hussein, I see you. Justine, I see you. Thank you very, very much for coming in. Kenneth, Arkwright City, Entebbe Road. Awesome, awesome. So today is a very, very special time that we are hoping to spend here today because we are gathered here to share knowledge, to share insights into a very important topic today. So to really start us off, I'll just do an introduction of myself. My name is Caroline Egesa. I'll be your moderator today, and I'm very, very glad to be hosting you today. I'm a governance professional, governance consultant, and so on and so forth. So today, why are we here? Why are we spending time here? Because it's a very, very dear topic that we are speaking about today. Unlocking boardroom potential, the power of diversity. That is why we're here. That is why we are spending our time here. But before we go along, I would like to take a special recognition of the two institutions that have put this together, to powerhouses, and you'll allow me do them justice just by reading out who they are, what it is that they do, so that we can know actually who is supporting and who is sponsoring this webinar today. We have Leading Boards Africa. Leading Boards Africa is a global corporate governance consultancy firm It's focused on providing exceptional corporate governance solutions as part of the tapestry of creation of high-performance organizations. So at Leading Boards Africa, they provide a wide range of customized governance solutions targeted at creating high-performing governing bodies and ethical, profitable, sustainable organizations that will have impact and drive socio-economic development in Africa. What's their vision? To be the preferred go-to consultancy firm for organizations seeking to adopt good governance to create, improve, sustain productivity, results, and impact in Africa. They do have a mission, which is to motivate superior performance in client organizations through delivery of exceptional, customized, and effective governance solutions and other support services. Their values, professionalism, innovation, learning, and of course, excellence. So it is with a warm heart that I say thank you very much to Leading Boards Africa for sponsoring this webinar. We do have as well, the other powerhouse is the Institute of Corporate Governance of Uganda. So the Institute of Corporate Governance is a not-for-profit body that was instituted in 2000 on the onset of privatization to create, propagate, promote, deepen, and entrench the corporate governance principles and practices of accountability, transparency, integrity, responsibility, and excellence in both the public and private organizations. So ICGU is an institute that derives its mandate from the Memorandum and Articles of Association, and it's governed by an 11-member council chaired by a president. They do have a secretariat, and they're led by a chief executive officer. So the Institute has membership organizations with a growing number for both the corporate and individual members. I hope we are all members of the Institute of Corporate Governance here. And it's also a member of the African Corporate Governance Network, and it has affiliations to the Asian Corporate Governance Association in Hong Kong. They do have a vision, an enterprise sector that upholds international best practices in corporate governance, the mission to promote excellence in corporate governance and principles and practices. They do have a few, values that they hold, and some focus areas, which are building national capacity in corporate governance, broad communication, visibility, and awareness about corporate governance. So they do have several activities towards achieving the above objectives that I have talked about. So I would like to say a huge thank you to the ICGU for sponsoring this webinar as well. So having looked at the theme, we said we need somebody who will really come in to be able to give us a keynote on this particular topic so that we can understand why diversity, why is it important? And so with us today is a gentleman who is going to be sharing very great insights on this topic, and he's going to give us a keynote address. He's going to hold a very important conversation with me. I do not want to do him an injustice just by mentioning his name, so you'll allow me read out his profile. Let me just get this, and so that I can do him good justice by reading this out. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, join me to welcome a distinguished gentleman, and he goes by the name of Dr. Dennis Mitanda. Dr. Dennis, you're very, very welcome, and you'll let me know how you would like for me to refer to you as we have this conversation.
Just Dennis.
Now,
we agreed,
Dennis.
just Dennis. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome, yes. So we have Dennis with us on the call. So Dennis is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Morgenthau Sterling, Inc. This Washington, D.C.-based public affairs firm leverages data-driven insights and strategies to promote U.S. direct investment abroad to Africa. So Dennis was among the first African staff directors of the U.S. House of Representatives Subcommittee on Africa. Before that, he served as the head of government affairs at Manchester Trade Inc. and transitioned to support the African Union, the African Trade Insurance Agency, the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, that's COMESA, and the Economic Commission for West African States, ECOWAS, the Trade and Development Bank, that's TDB, United Nations, and USAID. So Dennis has worked extensively on trade and investment policy in 40 plus years, developed and developing countries, and proficient at designing strategic communication and engagement programs. He facilitated the AFC-FTA negotiations in Niger, the Gambia, and Sierra Leone. He designed export promotion strategies for COMESA and ECOWAS, and initiated a 2-year multi-stakeholder campaign to ensure AGOA 2.0, passed in 2015. Before relocating to the United States, Dennis was Director of Business Development at InterSwitch and Group General Manager of the TARP Group, where he designed brand Uganda's Gifted by Nature campaign. Before his pivot to branding, he sold ICT solutions at Celtel, Airtel, and Uganda Telecom. Lastly, Dennis is a prolific reader, a writer, publisher, and researcher. Dennis has an undergraduate, a graduate, a postgraduate degrees in international relations, diplomatic studies, American politics, and international business. He also has an impressive array of broadcast engineering, copyright, photography, and audiovisual production skills. So that is the gentleman that we have in the house today. So Dennis, this is to invite you to give us our keynote address on unlocking boardroom potential, the power of diversity. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dennis. Over to you, Dennis.
Caroline, thank you so much. I want to say first why I insist that you call me Dennis. It's that the people who are on this call, I know practically most of them. For example, one of my heroes is Geoffrey Chikuguru. So Geoffrey and I have known each other for a long time. In fact, the week before I left Uganda, he didn't know this, but I went to him and sought his guidance because something was happening and I had to move. For example, Bernard Robinson, I've known Bernard for ages. Why am I bringing this up? I want to bring in the context of this presentation. This conversation is titled Unlocking Boardroom Power, but I wanted to change it to say Unlocking Boardroom Power in Uganda and other African developing countries based on the power of diversity. But then I thought, let me break this down further. How can the boardroom in Uganda and developing countries, how can that potential be unlocked by including women, disabled people, youth, Asians, Americans, Chinese? What is their value? What is their overall value to an entity like the boardroom? Then it occurred to me that I want to focus this presentation on the direct link between diversity and growth. I also want to talk about the importance of inclusion and profitability. I want to talk about the short and long-term aspects that one must consider when discussing diversity at corporate governance level. And then, of course, who are the most important stakeholders in this dynamic question? and what's each one's role? In other words, why should you care? Let me start from a very simple perspective. If you go to the LBA website right now, there is a very important course about how to become board ready, so to speak. But one of the elements they talk about is having a knowledge set, a mindset, a skill set, and a behavior set. Now, you wonder, why is it important to have a particular set or a particular mindset when you're doing these things? For me, the things that matter more than anything else, because they are very micro, but they are also macro, is your culture knowledge, your understanding of boardroom politics, your art of persuasion, your capacity to influence, your capacity to handle conflict resolution. Now, many people wonder, so at that level, why are these things important? What's very interesting is that many people don't realize that Ugandan boardrooms or Ugandan corporate governance are based on Anglo-American principles. In other words, the Americans and the British people have been driving boardroom aspects. But many people still don't understand that the essence of growth of corporate governance and the importance of the boardroom is based on what they call the Burl Means Corporation. This is something from the 1930s. This is between the First World War and the Second World War in the United States. The Burl and Means Corporation has something very, very important. There is a focus on shareholders from outside the firm imposing control on management that is already engaged in economic activities or business activities. So corporate governance on the board, the reason why, if you look at an ordinary organization chart, the reason the board is on top of everything is because they are designed, or they were meant to be, representatives of the shareholders. Yes, many people are saying, yeah, I bring in my friends to become board members. But the idea is that control is the key element of the Burl and Means Corporation. If you go and look at the essence of how American companies, American boardrooms operate nowadays, yes, in the past 10, 15, 20 years, the CEO has also become the board chairman or the board chairperson. The point is control. It's simply because if the management team has a stake in the management of their organization, they will not do what normal people do, which is sometimes abuse their control. Away from these things, it's also important for me to define corporate governance for what it really, really is. Corporate governance can be defined in many, many ways, but a standard definition for corporate governance is the control measures established within a firm to ensure that managers generate a return on investment to the capital suppliers. Now, I have spent a lot of time bringing these things up because of something called the agency problem. But I am coming to the heart of the matter because some people are wondering, why is somebody who focuses on promoting American investment to Africa give us this discussion? Because of one simple thing: the most important non-financial dynamic that American and the world's largest investors look for in a company, in a country, in a region is corporate governance. Corporate governance is the most important non-financial dynamic. It doesn't matter how charming you are. It doesn't matter how great your books look. It doesn't matter how amazing your greenfield or brownfield investment component is. African entities have one major problem. We don't know enough about them. There is not enough data about them. We don't have enough information. For example, how many wives does the CEO have? Does the CEO have a husband who beats her? As an example, does the company that we are going to put money in have many family relations? Is the finance manager the cousin of the brand manager? How do those things happen? We in the United States spend a significant amount of time suffering because we don't know enough about the African entities. But what intercedes that relationship is if there is a board of directors, a board that oversees the management. And I'm going to say something very interesting. If African boards of directors had one or two Americans on their boards, they would attract more investment. So the question is, why? That is the essence of diversity. What's very interesting is if you have a monolithic, an entity that has one kind of person, which is technically men, it is a bit of a challenge, because how do they know what they don't know? I'm going to say this in retrospect. Unfortunately for us, the elements around diversity have again been driven by the Americans. The Me Too movement, whereby women were being sexually harassed, and suddenly people think, oh, women are important. They forget that elements around gender parity in Africa have been going on for very, very long. African societies have very strong matriarchal societies. Go to the Kikuyu in Kenya and you will see that women are very, very strong. But what makes the society very strong? Let me break it down from a very family aspect, because we can talk about the profitability of the company, but sometimes that doesn't mean much. But let's talk about a woman or a man having a different outlook to life because they were raised in a family where there was only a mother. What about if you were raised in a family where there was only a father? What about if you were raised in a family where the father was the Lord and Savior? Whatever the father said went. The mother's opinion was not considered. And on the other end of the spectrum, if you grew up in a family where the mother and father had consistent engagements, whereby their opinions were considered, there is a very, very big chance that your family was at least 35 to 65% more functional. Because at the heart of the matter is a certain dysfunction in the human being. Dysfunctional people make dysfunctional managers, and dysfunctional managers are more difficult to manage at the board level than non-dysfunctional managers. So what do we mean by dysfunctional managers? I will not touch that one because I think it's so unfair. But the key aspects we need to remember is that diversity is at the heart of the matter. How do you extract insights from people who are not like you? So what does a Dennis Matanda, who was born in Uganda, left Uganda, came to the United States, and became the first staff director that was African, what value did I add to the House Foreign Affairs Committee, where all my predecessors had been American? Is there some value that I can add? As a manager, the answer might be yes or no, but it doesn't matter what value I add unless I infuse my value into the policies that come next. What I'm also saying is that diversity, the essence of inculcating diversity, starts at the top. It starts at the management and the board level. So if we go back to the overall question, which is unlocking boardroom power in Uganda and other developing countries based on the power of diversity, I want to say that the essence is not to focus on the word diversity. It is to remember the power of the board and ask yourself, if you had put your own money in the business that you are overseeing, what kind of things do you want to see? Board diversity has a direct relationship with profitability. Why is diversity important to profitability? It's very, very simple, actually. We get into business to attract customers, but we also get into business to retain customers. Because if you bring in a business and cannot manage it efficiently, you are not going to keep that business. If you cannot manage the account efficiently, you will not keep the business. So you're going to spend more time generating additional clients, generating additional entities, but you will have lost something. I want to go back to something that's of absolute importance to me as a person. Every single time I go to people and say, I would like for you to invest in an African entity. Let me give a simple example to a place where I worked for a while, the Gambia. If you go to the Gambia, it has four very, very big strengths vis-a-vis the United States. They are less than 8 hours if you fly directly from New York to Banjul. They have access to the sea. They have English-speaking people. And most of all, they have a very solid corporate culture. But when I say a corporate culture, it's not based on governance. It's based on particular elements around Sharia law. You do good, you pray, you're pious, and all those things. What they have not done is instilled an institutionalized Anglo-American corporate governance that will generate the sort of resources or the sort of comfort. What does diversity do for a country like Gambia? Very simple. If you bring in Gambians who have lived and worked in the United States, instantly they are no longer like the Gambians who've been in Gambia all their lives. It's the very same thing with Uganda. Uganda means a lot to me, especially in terms of the US-Africa relationship, or the relationship between corporate capital providers, because Uganda has a corporate governance institute. Not every African country has a corporate governance institute. Not every African country or every African region has a board's perspective or a push for board and governance. Related to that, if you look at the global governance indicators or the world governance indicators, corporate governance has a direct relationship with what they call the micro determinants of foreign direct investment. If we were to take it down to the lower level, it doesn't matter how many times you say Uganda has the most delicious pineapples. It doesn't matter how many times you say Uganda has the most delicious mangoes. Uganda has coffee. Uganda has all these natural resources. The key question is, if I gave you money to manage the process of exporting or to process the pineapples or the mangoes, can you turn a profit? Can you grow? And if your answer is yes, the question is, how can I be sure? Then you say, I have a board of governors, a board of directors. What experience do they have? Oh, they can process things. They have done these things for a very, very long time. And your answer is, okay, now I have more assurance. I feel very good. The question there is, at what level? What is more important? Is it having the oranges or the mangoes or the pineapples, or is it having the board? At the end of the day, what matters at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you say. It's probably the governance aspects that matter. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you very, very much, Dennis. I must admit, you caught me off guard when you stopped right there because I was really listening in and tuned in, focused in. So when you stopped, I was like, oh, there should be more. There should be more. So, but
Because I would like more questions. If there were
yes.
questions, it helps me a great deal to respond them. And that's why I was giving as much time as possible for questions and for insights so that we can have a conversation. Also, I have to admit that my big cousin-in-law, Josephine, is here, so I'm a little intimidated. So I just wanted you to know that it's important to me. Thank you.
Yes, I do not think, Dennis, thank you for that, but I don't think you don't look like someone who can be easily intimidated. I
Um, so
must
it's what
say.
they call bravado. I do
Uh,
present a
oh,
very confident posture, but I still know that I have bigger cousins, bigger
yes,
friends, people that have more
yes.
experience than me, people that I seek guidance from. So it's very important for me to recognize that.
Yes, awesome, awesome. Thank you very, very much, and thank you very much for sharing those insights. And while you were sharing, I was taking notes, so that I don't miss what you're saying. I know we have a recording, and I know we shall share that, but it's important that we just take note of what it is that you said. I mean, why should we care? And we care because we are here. And you talked about a knowledge set, a skill set, mindset, just like the leading boards Africa has on their website, which is really, really key. Then you went into, culture knowledge of boardroom politics. The examples, the way you brought it out, I mean, you're very passionate, of course, about Africa. You're very passionate about Uganda, and that is why you're here sharing these insights because you've had a lot of experience. You've been in different countries, in different areas. So this really speaks to what it is that you are talking about. Then the way you brought out, that corporate governance is most important, the non-functional dynamic, because sometimes we think when the finances are there, then everything should go on well. But you are looking at it as a very, very important dynamic, which is definitely appreciated. You also, for me, you tickled me and said, the organizations that we have in Uganda, how much do we know about the people that we put into these spotlight, the CEOs, the different members of the board, not because of the professionalism that they bring, but to know them as people, their background, their culture, their beliefs, their principles, the way they were raised. You've really brought a lot of insight into this. And of course, this speaks to the value addition that you spoke about, infusing values into policies when they get into these different positions. So thank you very, very much for all this that you have shared, how even corporate governance affects the foreign direct investment, the way the countries out there make decisions, and the way they look at us as Uganda, the way they look at our corporate governance, our organizations, the way we run them. These are very great insights. So I will allow questions to come in. There must be some in the chat, but I would like for anybody who has a question that they would like to ask, kindly put up your electronic hand, and so that we can have a conversation with you. Dennis really wants to hear what you have to say. He wants to answer some questions so that we can throw more light into the topic in which we are discussing, which is really, really vital. So anybody put up your electronic hand so that you can just acknowledge what Dennis has just shared, and we take it from there. I will go into the chat just to look at what we have there as well, but please feel free to put up your electronic hands, please.
Caroline, I wanted to provide very important context in why I talked about if the CEO has more than one wife, for example, or why we have to care if the CEO's husband is domestically violent. What's very interesting is that in the United States or in more developed countries, that doesn't matter as much as it matters in Africa. Why? Because there are systems. For example, less than 24 hours ago, I was tasked to help raise money for an African entity. The difficult part is that I need to spend time with the CEO of that firm. While in the United States, if I wanted to raise $5 million, I just need to upload the company dynamics, the company term sheet, the company ask. I just have to upload it onto a private equity funding platform, because the person or the CEO, we have their social security number, we have their credit report, we have their police reports, we have essences, we have access to data. In Africa, we have anecdotes. We can turn that data into information very quickly. If there is a police report on 11 Union Street in Princeton, and the question is, who lives in that 11 Union Street in Princeton? It's Dr. Dennis Matanda. What is the chance that the incident was domestic violence? If you look at statistics in Princeton, the number of people who are domestically violent is another level. Or Dennis Matanda is African American. Or what is the statistics involved with men who are domestically violent? Or he is not African American, he's from Africa. What are the statistics? So there are data points for us to see. In Africa, it's almost impossible to know.
And I do hear you, Dennis. It makes such a difference. So when organizations are making decisions, very important decisions, because this is the essence of who we are. When you look at that police report, just because the person is Dr. Dennis and all that has worked everywhere, that doesn't mean that's important, but that's not the essence of who they are. So thank you very much for that. Yes, Edith has a hand up. Please go ahead, Edith.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Dennis, for the presentation. I have questions around two areas. One, when you look at Uganda, we've been, okay, the whole world knows we have the best policies, to the extent that our neighboring countries will borrow what we're using and then be able to perform better. So when you're looking at governance, people have boards, institutions have good boards. With the best of the best, the experience is there, the choice was made right. However, when it comes to actual implementation, it looks like the boards are super, like there is an invisible hand that now imposes what the board should do. So I don't know, when it happens in that scenario, what would be your advice? But Dennis, what would be your advice? The board is available, the policies, the rules and procedures available, but they're never implemented in the way that they're supposed to. So I'm imagining that if you're looking from your perspective, you're looking at an institution in Africa or Uganda at that, and you're looking out for that, you might land on a wrong one. And again, what happens is, No, anyway, it's an issue of striking a balance. Then the other question is, when we speak of diversity, I realize I've worked for over some years, and I've realized that there is a detach from what the youth know and what actual boards know. You find that most of our boards have people in their 50s and above, and yet the youth expect more. They think different. They're dynamic. They're fast. So, what would be your advice on adopting or identification or mentoring or programs for youth that can make them, I think you mentioned that the LBA has something where they mentored how to make someone board ready. So what can we do for the youth in Uganda to make them board ready, to the extent that when we are ready to pick on some, we make good choices? Those are my two questions.
I want to say first, Edith, thank you very much for your question, because there's something you mentioned that many people might miss. What is that invisible hand? What is that thing that seems to prevent us from implementing? I think that we must not underestimate the power of the ecosystem within which many of us operate. Many people don't really appreciate that some of the boards that many of us sit on might not be as private sector boards. They might be the most lucrative boards in Uganda, if I'm not mistaken, are the boards of para or semi-government related entities where there is longevity, or boards of large organizations where people sit there for a long time, where they maintain a particular culture. While that's not necessarily the reason, we must remember that every time somebody says, I will provide X, Y, and Z over a particular period of time, they probably have to deal with board politics. If the politics are associated with the environment, and if the environment is not as regulated as it needs to be, there is a chance that they'll not achieve their objectives. But let me assure you of one thing, Edith. That hand, that invisible hand that you're talking about, is also present here in the United States. I'm sitting in my wife's office, and I can guarantee you that because my wife works for a big corporate, I listen to her speak, and I know very well that those fundamental delays are not only in Uganda. In fact, when I listen to her speak to her colleagues, because my wife is American, she works for an American firm, and they have the sort of challenges I have seen in Uganda. That's the first thing. So I'm asking that if there are challenges in the United States, there is a very big chance that the challenges at board level and management level in Uganda are even worse because of the need for additional regulation, additional regulatory environments. Let me give you a last example in this regard. If a board committee is supposed to deliver on a particular report, and they were supposed to deliver it maybe 2 days from now, and the person who heads the committee goes home and they're working on it, and their power gets cut off, that is going to be a delay. It might not look like a big thing, but it is a fundamental dent in the works. Edith, I can answer your question by also saying there are many reasons, and I can say I don't know, and there are many ways we can explore this. Let me now move on to the next thing, which is how can we inculcate more youth? The reality is that many of us in Africa don't realize that over 50, 60% of our population is youth. Many of us haven't factored in the fact that the service sector is growing much faster than the goods and delivery sector. Lastly, many of us don't really appreciate the demographic dividend, that the youth actually drive consumption. If you look at 10 years from now, Africa's 55 countries will have more consumption than South America. There will be at least half of consumption in Europe, and that's being driven by what you call budgeteers, who are youth. If we have an understanding of these things, the pressure will be on the boards to consider them, just like the pressure has been on the boards to consider women and people of color and things like that. It has to be a market-driven process.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Dennis, for those insights that you've given to Edith's questions. And even when you were talking about, the last bit, and you're talking about the 50, 60% of the youth, and what is it that they're taking up? How are they communicating? All these things matter. But even the world in which we are bringing them up as their parents, the same principles that our parents instilled within us, we are being more flexible with them because of the environment and the society asks that we do this. So all these things are things that we need to take into consideration. And the boardroom, because of the power that it holds, needs to be thinking diversely. It doesn't only have to be diverse, but the thinking, I think, also has to be diverse. So thank you very much for that. So in the chat, we have a question from Fini. Afeni says, in a typical African culture, the word control is synonymous with the leadership experiences and examples we see with authoritarian dictatorial politicians. When you tell an African leader, I have given you control, it is interpreted to be absolute. How then do you help leaders in corporate governance realize they don't have absolute power and that power is actually shared um, it is to be appropriated in a healthy way. Many have been corrupted by power. You can take that, Dennis.
I want to say something because I have managed to work with very, very powerful people who have absolute control over their organizations. Let me give you a very simple example. Afrexim Bank. The Afrexim Bank's president, Professor Orama, is the president, he's the CEO, he's also board chairman. If you see the way people treat Professor Orama, he is treated like a head of state. If you go to Cairo, if you see him, he flies around in a private jet with over 20 people. If you go to the African Development Bank, the president of that institution is driven in that same fashion. If you go to the Trade and Development Bank, the current president is also co-board chairperson. Power itself is not bad, but power is nothing without control. The person might have control, but the essence of control is checks and balances. If a board chairperson is saying things that are unfair, and you have a woman who has experience doing all these things, and she says, Mr. Chairman, in my experience, that is wrong, and she pipes up. But she also has an understanding of boardroom politics, how to navigate politics, how to persuade others. There is a chance that they will check that control. It comes down to individuals. But related to the essence of control, even down to the essence of when you ask somebody, oh, at the board level, does it mean dictatorial aspects? The question that came up is of absolute importance. In Africa, the environment is the issue. If a board chairman has power over everybody else, they have power over the boardroom, they have power over the directors. That's a challenge, especially because if a director is not a shareholder, they have more allegiance to the CEO than to the owners of the company. If the owners of the company are the Republic of Uganda, there is a very big chance that the interest might be swayed. I am not saying that that is what typically happens. I'm comparing it to an American company whereby the shareholders are represented on the board, which means they can check and balance the entity. So I'm basically saying that there is a challenge to the typical board in an African country because it might not be private sector, it might be a non-governmental entity or a government-related entity where the shareholding is not necessarily directly represented.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dennis, for those insights. And Philly says thank you very much. Okay, so we have, yes, we have Samuel, you have a hand up. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. My name is Samuel Okutana, a certified executive coach, a leadership consultant, a global speaker and author. I want to thank you very much, my brother Dennis Matanda, for a work well done concerning the things that you have shared with us regarding diversity and boards. I have had an opportunity of sitting on a number of boards, and even currently I sit on a number of them, both in public and private sector. And also, by nature of the work I do at Inspired Leaders International, I find myself in different places training boards. So I see three challenges that many are not talking about around us when it comes to the conversation on diversity in boards. And I felt I needed to raise them. And I hear from you, Dennis, and any other person, what you think. First of all, is what I will call diversity for the sake of diversity. I find that as a big challenge we are experiencing with a number of boards. You know, you find people want to thump their chests that they have different colors on the board, they have different ages on the board, thump their chests that they have different nationalities on the board. You see, we have different genders, different sexes, etc. And so a number of boards, diversity has looked like just another American fad that is now trending. Just like we had the SAPs in the 80s in public service, the structured adjustment programs, and now we are talking of what are they called? Forgetting it. So I'm looking forward to such noble ideas that are also born in Africa and adopted by America and other Western economies. So concerning this first concern of diversity for the sake of diversity, how do we ensure that diversity is actually for transformation and impact of these institutions and the people they serve, not just for the sake of diversity? And second last is diversity for lack of a better word, encrypted agendas. Today, when you talk of diversity, it often comes with two other words. It's called DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion. It's my considered view that this conversation on diversity has also been hijacked by certain movements to push their own agendas into our companies, into our nations, into our communities. And of course, you rightly put it when you were talking about, positioning our companies for funding, for those venture capitalists, and so on and so forth. Because we find ourselves maybe being, for lack of a better word, in a begging position. But I think if we are to beg, quote unquote, we need to be dignified beggars. Whereas they say a beggar has no choice living. So in other words, my concern number two is whereby diversity is simply something that people are hiding in to push other agendas. And lastly, it's diversity as a promoter for many boards. I find that members come representing certain constituencies, depending on what the company does, whether it is in foods and beverages, whether it's in automobiles, whether it's in whatever it is. You find most boards have members who represent certain constituencies. And for them to be representatives on the boards, so many interesting factors are considered. Many of them may have nothing to do with the person's competence, excellence, and professional fitness. It could be that they have been sent because they are the ones that talk the loudest in their union meetings. It could be that they are sent to represent the constituency because that person has a relationship with the CEO of that constituency. So excellent mental cross-pollination would come out of a good place of diversity where we are looking at quality, where we are looking at idea formalization, where we are looking at variety of quality ideas. They often say that two heads are better than one, but I think it depends on the kind of heads they are. So these are the three concerns I have, Dennis. First, that diversity, most places, is for the sake of diversity. How can we do that for the sake of transformation? Diversity as a hiding place for a private agenda. How can we ensure that diversity serves the purpose of the companies and the nations and the communities, not some kinds of movements that promote their self-aggrandizement? And finally, diversity as a promoter for mediocrity. How do we ensure that people who represent certain on these boards come really on the basis of merit, competence, and professional fitness? That said, there is no doubt diverse experiences are a good grade for innovating. So thank you very much, Dennis, for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Samuel. I'm going to say something whereby I'm very biased. I'm the father of two girls. My daughters are 10 this year. My wife is a high-ranking official and a functional human being in her workplace. The reason I'm very big on diversity is I know that for a woman to get to that level, she has to work almost twice or three times as hard as a man. A person of color, a man like me, by the time I get to a place like where I have worked, I have to climb and work hard. Let me put it this way. I am more qualified and more educated than my supervisors in the last 4 American companies that I've worked in. My experiences are so fundamental, but I have never ever served as the chairperson or the managing director. I had to create my own entity at which to serve as the head. The point I'm making is that we should not underestimate the importance of diversity. The time we say diversity, it means that person has gone through adverse experiences, adverse challenges, and they have been time and tested. Of course, if a person puts his girlfriend on the board and the merit is not qualified or quantifiable, that's understandable. But we have to ask the question, how often does this happen? Secondly, let's talk about fads. Fads, in my opinion, are often the result of underlying pressure. So by the time it comes out and becomes viral and becomes successful, there is a very big chance that there are market-driven reasons. So let me go back to the essence of diversity. And I promise you that what my brother was saying is downright true. Sometimes fads are being imposed. Sometimes when you talk about, for example, some people say that ESG, environmental, societal, and governance aspects are being imposed on entities, forcing oil companies not to export. Yes, there could be an agenda, but let's talk about the essence of what those things do. They are tried, they are tested, they are market-driven, and lastly, they are associated with supply and demand. If the people in the United States who are providing capital are saying, don't give our money or don't give access to Uganda because Uganda doesn't support homosexuals, what do you expect the American government to do? So there could be a push, and we could say we don't beg, a beggar has no choice, all that. All I'm saying is there are circumstances under which we don't have control. But related to that, if we go back to the essence of diversity and why it's a common good, the reality is that a different opinion, a second eye, a second set of eye, a third set of eyes helps the overall process. And sometimes, if you look at the United States Congress is one of the most difficult entities within which to work because things take a very long time. But interestingly, by the time something comes out, it has been tried, it has been tested, and most importantly, it has interested stakeholders that can push it to the next level.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dennis, for that, and definitely Samuel for the questions that you asked, but also the information that you shared. So we shall go to the chat. One of the guests is asking, where does corporate culture and like-mindedness come regarding attraction of investment capital? This is debt and equity. What's your overall assessment of the investment platform in Uganda following the passing of the Anti-Homosexual Act of 2023?
Let me say it from a very simple perspective. The Anti-Homosexual Act itself does not necessarily reflect Uganda's culture. What it represents is Uganda's interest. What was Uganda's interest in passing the Anti-Homosexual Act? Well, it seems as though people were saying our children are being harassed, they are being attacked, so we need to do something to protect our aspect. Uganda's interest is the interest of a sovereign country. So in that aspect, we are solid. The big challenge is Uganda is also out there looking for capital. And the capital providers exist in places like the United States. If you have the biggest capital provider, for example, BlackRock, which is the biggest equity firm in the world, it has over $4 trillion to invest. But what if the account manager of the project that could go to Uganda has a son who has a best friend who is gay? Again, a son who has a best friend who is gay. And that boy was beaten in their high school, and they came to stay at this account manager's home. That is a direct experience with anti-homosexual behavior. And if he's given a dossier saying, let us invest in Uganda, and that thing highlights that Uganda has passed one of the world's most draconian anti-homosexual laws, is there a chance that they will want to work with Uganda? That is the point.
Yes, thank you very much, Dennis, for giving us that perspective. Now, at this juncture, and I know, Dennis, you're going to stay with us, we do actually have a panel with us that is also going to look at diversity from the different angles, and as far as the potential, unlocking the boardroom potential is concerned. So I would like for us at this juncture to bring them in, for me to introduce them, so that we can actually even throw more light, have more insights from, because they're diverse people as well. We took that into consideration, given the topic that we're discussing now, so that we can even take the questions that are in the chat after we have also engaged the panelists. And this will broaden our discussion, will broaden the questions that will be coming in, and then we shall be able to look at it at a full package. So at this juncture, please allow me introduce our panelists. There are three of them. I'll just give a brief introduction of who they are so that you can get to know them a little bit more. Dennis, I'm glad you're going to be staying with us so that you can, I know that you'll also glean from where they're coming from, what it is that they're thinking, the mindset, so that we can all live here transformed and with a lot of questions and what it is that we want to do after this discussion, because we've invested a lot of time. So allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to take this opportunity to invite or introduce to you Hajat Seviala. Hajat, you're very, very welcome to this conversation. There you are, looking very good today and very smart. You're most welcome, Hajat, and it's good to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Caroline. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, you're most welcome. And I'll just read out a brief bio about Hajat. She's really, really well accomplished. But one thing that I'm seeing here, she's known as Mama Insurance Africa. So that is one of Hajat's areas. She's a professional insurer, professional manager, an environmentalist. We all know that. And she joined the insurance industry in 1982. So she's married with children, and she's had a seamless insurance working experience. She holds a postgraduate diploma in business management and a first-class master's degree in management studies from UMI. She's an eminent woman of Uganda from the Women Situation Room 2016 and an international climate champion, popularly known as Mama Green as well. The CV is quite long, and because of time, I'll just take the opportunity to also introduce our other two panelists, if you will allow me. So we have Mr. Bernard Magulu. Bernard, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So I'll just introduce CPA Bernard is here with us today, and he has a foray spanning over 25 years of experience in the financial sector management, in accounting, in business regeneration, and strategy execution. His profile is a senior partner, founder, CEO of BPK Pal Associates. They're certified public accountants. He's a board chairman at PESA Cancer Support Consortium. He's a chairman at Founder Robinson Recruitment, chairman, executive board and president of Uganda Matters University Alumni, and non-executive director at Green Shares, Uganda's social enterprise for unlocking the farming potential of small holder farmers for scalable yielding. It's a long profile, and so Bernard, you are very, very welcome as well. And last but not least, we have Mr. Max Manzi in the house. You're very welcome, Max.
Thank you, Caroline. Pleasure being here.
Awesome, awesome. So I'll just do a brief bio of Max as well, so that we can know who is on our panel and who is speaking to us as well today. So Max is he's a chartered governance professional. He's an advocate and a strategic leader. He's dynamic, highly accomplished, and result-oriented in the realms of corporate governance, legal practice, and organizational leadership. So he's a distinguished chartered governance professional accredited by the Chartered Governance Institute UK and Ireland. He holds a Master in Laws and a Bachelor in Laws with a postgraduate from Law Development Center. So you are very, very welcome, Max, as well. And I can see your long profile as well. So you are all very, very welcome to this panel. So let's get right into it. We have had the privilege of listening in the questions that have been given unto us by our members who are here today listening in. Our participants, we appreciate you once again. So I'm going to start. Our panelists are going to be looking at this whole diversity issue from different perspectives. So I'm going to start with you, Max. You can just give us a brief about this whole topic that we're talking about and the angle in which you're going to be coming from. But I have a question for you that goes like this. How does diversity in the boardroom influence decision-making and overall board performance? Can you share specific examples where diversity led to better outcomes? Over to you, Max.
Thank you, Caroline, and good morning or good afternoon, good evening, our members online, wherever we are logging on from. I want to appreciate Dennis for doing justice to the theme today. Just to pick up a few thoughts from my notes. Dennis talked about the fact that the essence of diversity starts at the top. And he spoke to the power of the board and the fact that diversity must have a direct relationship with profitability. And Samuel talked about the need for transformation, the need for impact, so that at the end of the day, we don't have diversity just being a box ticking exercise. I also saw a chat from Mr. Chihuguru Geoffrey talking about the need for directors to lend their skills or perspectives for the benefit of the company, and anything short of that would be a disaster for the board. But I want to focus on diversity of experience or diversity of expertise, because just like Samuel said, sometimes we tend to focus more on the gender issues, on the ethnicity, which is, these ideas are really important, of course. But like Samuel said, sometimes there are other ensuing agendas in there. But to talk specifically about diversity of experience, when we talk about diversity of experience, we are basically referring to the variety of the professional backgrounds, the industries. We are looking at the functional roles. We are looking at the life experiences that board members bring to the table. And it's all about having people who have walked different paths and have faced different challenges. So for instance, Caroline and members, if you can consider, let's say, a technology company that brings in a board member who has a background, maybe in consumer psychology, you'll find that while such person may not be a tech expert, their deeper understanding of consumer behavior would be able to provide critical insights into how the company's products are perceived and how marketing strategies should be crafted. So that kind of cross-pollination of ideas often will lead to innovative solutions that initially really wouldn't emerge in a homogeneous group. And also talking about diversity of expertise, which is basically about having members that have specialized knowledge across different domains, be it finance, be it legal, be it marketing, be it technology, be it governance, or any other areas. You find that these would be critical to the strategic oversight that boards provide. Remember that Dennis emphasized the fact that diversity must connect to the power of the board. It must connect in that power of the board making strategic decision for the betterment of the company. So if it's a financial institution, maybe that faces, let's say, cyber threats, you'll find that if that financial institution can appoint a cybersecurity expert to its board, then the institution will be able to enhance its risk management strategy. It will be able to ensure that it's not only compliant with current regulations, but also be proactive in safeguarding its assets as well as the reputation. So such expertise would be vital in guiding the company through any complex decisions, and therefore be able to enhance decision-making and ultimately lead to the long-term sustainability of the company. So I thought I should bring in that part of diversity of experience, but as well as diversity of expertise. I'm privileged to serve on a board that has that kind of diverse background at BRAC Uganda Bank Limited. And I'm glad part of my senior management team and the board chair are on this call. But we have diverse backgrounds from Uganda, USA, France, Bangladesh, Mauritius, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Hungary. And these are lawyers, they are bankers, they are accountants, some are from the energy sector, others are private equity investors. So you find that this diversity in the boardroom is able to introduce a wide range of perspectives, experiences, and expertise. So you find that the board is looking at issues from multiple angles. And I believe this is able to lead to more robust discussions. It's able to we're able to have creative problem solving as well as well-rounded decisions, which enhances our decision-making as a board, but it also improves our risk management because we are better equipped to identify and mitigate risks, looking at them collectively from different aspects, from different angles, whether financial, whether legal, whether technological standpoints, that we ensure a comprehensive risk management. And as we do that, we encourage innovation, we're able to encourage and obtain strategic advantage, and then ultimately lead to better performance. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you very much, Max, for sharing that with us. And I can say that I've had the privilege of being in the same room with the board at BRAC Uganda, and what you are saying is true. Very diverse when they're having the discussions, very different point of views. And by the time you leave, you really feel that, you know, they are definitely diverse with the experience that they have. Of course, you've pointed out the strategic oversight that the board has. Then you talked about long-term sustainability. I mean, that is a whole different important topic, and I'm hoping that we'll have also another discussion about that as well. You also pointed out, you know, risk management being key as well. So thank you very much for bringing that in and helping us understand it from that perspective. So I'm going to, Harjit, I'm going to go over to you right now. So looking at the importance, Albert, could you mute, please? Thank you. So looking at what has been discussed, Harjit, what do you think are the most significant barriers to achieving diversity in the boardroom? And how can they be overcome? Because that is the most important thing. And would you say there are any innovative approaches that boards can adapt to foster a more inclusive environment?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Caroline. I'd like to appreciate my fellow panelists and our keynotes. Your question is a very pertinent question. There are very many barriers to board diversity. We have actually heard what board diversity is. I'm not going to go through it and why we need it. Barrier number one is that board is not a club. It's not a club where you have 40 people, 30 people. Board is 6 to 13. So there is a barrier of numbers, it's limited numbers. The other barrier that I look at is that boards do have, as they are serving, some don't have limited terms. You know, you have 6 people on the board as constituted, and they are serving unlimited terms. So the ones that you have there, those are the ones that you have. So there's no way you can now bring in diversity. And the other thing is composition of boards, depending on whether it's a public board. The way boards are composed is set in the laws that set up that institution. And once diversity is not properly considered in the law, then there's no way you can bring it. And most of the diversity I see in these laws is gender, and somehow in gender and the expertise. But there's no diversity in ethnic, there's no diversity in culture, there's nothing from that direction. So once the law is there, there's no way you can change that law until you've gone back to Parliament. But you must convince Parliament that it's actually necessary for you to change that law because of diversity. The other thing is, the other challenge that I see is that unlike management, where we have succession planning and the pipeline of managers to pick from, we do not have such in most boards. And you find that most boards, public boards, there is a minister who actually appoints those boards. And the minister's consideration may be slightly different from what we are looking at. The minister may look at how green you are, how more yellow you are, or how more red you are. Those may be the considerations for the minister. So diversity may not be accommodated in that way. And then for public boards, as I said, really, succession planning may be very, very difficult for you to consider. Lastly, culture within boards. This culture is that the way things were done is the way things have to be done. So there are these cultures within boards that's a challenge to diversity. So how we are composed, depending on what sort of board it is, it may be a family business. And once a family business, you have family members, and that's it. And the other one, Carol, which is very interesting, is called a Queen Bee syndrome. Now, for us who have been on board, we want to shine alone. We don't want to pull others up. We want to be there, be there, be there, be there. And it is us who are there and there. But then, we serve diverse clientele. Like we have the Gen Zs, we have other people from different countries. So us being able to accommodate the ethnicity and the young ones, the disease and whatever, it may be very difficult since the boards now are composed according to what is in the tool. And that tool, some of them are cast in stone. You may not be able to change them. So basically, those are the challenges that I look at. And I would like to stop there for that. If it is okay, Carol, for me just to stop on that one.
Yes.
And yeah, basically, yes. Anything else you wanted me to respond to?
Yes, first of all, to appreciate you, Harriet, for really bringing that thinking, to say, where is it that we come from, and also throwing us into the public organizations, the boards, the way they are composed based on the law. That's also another perspective to look at, the terms in our office. How long is the board tenure? Does it allow then for that diversity that we are talking about? Then the succession planning is also something that you brought about as a challenge if there is no succession planning. So thank you very much for that. Of course, having looked at these challenges, we need to say, what are the solutions? What is the innovative approach that we should be having to be able to look into these challenges? You could share with us what your experience has been, one example, so that we can, have it even in the full discussion as we go along.
Okay. There needs to be we need to actually appreciate that we need diversity first and foremost. You may find that the negatives are more than the positives. So we need for each particular board to appreciate that we need diversity for that board. Then after we have understood that, if it is a public board, we need to let the lawmakers really understand that, yes, diversity is important. We should be able to change this law to be like this, to have diversity included in there, in this aspect or that aspect. And after we've done that, Carol, I see that most of our boards where we're serving, there are board tools where these board composition are embedded. So you need to be able to agree the process of changing those board tools to ensure that they actually cater for a board that is diverse. But it should not be, as Samuel said, it should not be diversity for the sake of diversity. There must be value that comes to this board as we look to value. As we look to the diversity, it should not be like ticking a box that we are diverse here. We have 20, we have 3 women, we have 7 men. No. So we need to ensure that there is value that comes to this board. So basically, that's what I can say for now, Carol. I thank you so much for your question. Yes, maybe, yes.
Thank you very much, Hajat, and for bringing out that whole thing of the board tools, because they are, before the board comes in, you know, they're well equipped, but also the tools, it's what you have in your toolbox that you keep bringing out to fix and be able to enhance the board that you have. And when you talked about value, the thing that came to mind is, what is the purpose? I think purpose of any organization, purpose of any company, any enterprise, any institution is key for the board to understand, so that we're not just doing diversity for the sake of it, but what is the purpose? Once you understand the purpose, I think then unpacking this whole question of diversity, so that the value that the diversity brings actually feeds into the purpose of the organization. So thank you very much. Bernard, I would like to go to you. Are you there?
Yes, of course.
Awesome, awesome. Nice to have you here once again. So I would like to ask you, I mean, you've had the conversation. They say that diversity often brings with it diversity of opinions, obviously, which can lead to conflict, because they're different minds. So in your opinion, how can boards manage and leverage the differences that we're saying needs that come through when you have that whole diversity, so that we can have better decision making, rather than letting them, you know, become like a source of division? Because Dennis talked about, we all come from different cultures. We all come from different backgrounds. Some people come from single parented families, you know, the culture with which you've been raised. Some of us in Uganda went to the single sex schools. Some people went to the, you know, the mixed. So all these make up who we are. And so when we are on the board and we understand that, oh, you know, it comes with power, as we've said, different opinions come together. So how do we harness this to make it work?
Okay, thank you so much. It's very profound that my colleague and longtime friend Dennis Matanda, for the last 20 years, we meet again. So one of these days we'll catch up in New Jersey. And I appreciate my colleagues that have also presented on this very noble topic. I'll tell you that currently I'm a board chairman for Cancer Consortium. And this is an NGO. The way boards in NGOs operate and in private sector is slightly different. And the expectations are also slightly different. For regulated institutions, the likes of banks, insurance companies, there is much more farmer compliance as well, in terms of what is expected and how it should be done. You have to stick to the rule. You make a small change like this, even if you have done so many nice things, that one small decision you make can be a little bit of a challenge for you. Now, in the context, I wanted to approach this from the optics, is what they don't teach you, not prescriptive on diversity, but the actual challenges and issues that are before us, especially during the boardroom. And many people fear to talk about these things. It looks like it is ceremonial. It looks like everybody, if somebody is the one talking, you have to go by the wind. And the reality on the ground is that conflict, different opinions in many situations lead to disagreements, and they can hinder decision making. However, the way you resolve these issues is the key. And in these boards, the captain of the ship is the chairman. So you need to have a chairman who is in position. The chairman must have distilled experience to manage, especially domineering chief executives, because the domineering chief executives can be in position to hijack the board. And once they hijack the board, then you get a little bit of a problem. And in practical situations, there are also issues that probably behind the curtain that you may not know, and the caucus movement is a real challenge in these boards. So still goes back to how you need to have a broad-based approach of accepting and listening. Listening to each other is very important. And in many situations, for the boards that I have been, regardless of size, sometimes there is a vision that size matters, but regardless of size, I realize that the chairman and the ability of the respective individuals to listen to each other becomes extremely profound. For instance, ladies sometimes, unless in this patriarchal society and somebody is extremely forceful, aggressive in delivery and communication, many times they come across in delivering the message in a certain way. So if you have a counter board member that does not appreciate the message that is being shared in that meeting, then you'll get a very big challenge. So listening and being accommodative of different views. Before somebody has even completed speaking, somebody is saying, no. That is what exactly happens. Otherwise, if I give you a prescriptive listing here, that is not what happens in the boardroom. So you now get situations where some people think that they are the ringleaders, think that they are strong opinionated. They are the ones who have the institution at heart. The rest, but remember, all of them went through a process of getting them into this board appointment. I therefore feel that embracing and managing diversity, especially different opinions, can turn potential challenges into opportunities, because the respective board members have depth and have demonstrated experience. And that demonstrated experience, especially from different angles, is what you put together so that you can forge a way forward. And how to manage this, especially by leveraging the opinions of others, a prescriptive list would suggest active listening. That is, if the chairman may be accommodative, but the CEO may not, or a particular board member, because of the structure, he has either a matrix reporting, or it's a global appointment from United States, a global appointment, or the background of the particular board where you are seated. For instance, boards in countries like Norway, they seem to be different. In Netherlands, they actually work with appointed board members. And when you look at the far right, where you have the Chinese, Asia Pacific, it's about performance, it is about delivery, it's about numbers, it is about execution of strategy. And they allow diversity in the sense that young members can be accommodated onto these boards. So seeking a common ground becomes some kind of area which is very key, but the captain is the board chairman. The moment you have a board chairman that is taking sides, the entire board will not be effective. And in achieving this, these are one of the things we need to put into context: the experience of the chairman and the experience of how other members are willing to accommodate others becomes extremely important, because sometimes you can disagree, but in a respectful way, and that not very many people are willing to accept that. Then utilizing and fostering a culture of constructive debate. I have been in a board where somebody, especially in the West, where he said, I disagree, put it on record. Can it be minuted that this is my position? In other words, exceptional reporting. So because this person has got a mandate from the board of who placed that individual within the board. So the nature of discourse is either, yes, he has a mandate, a stewardship principle to take back to the appointee. So the dynamics in boards, I'm telling you, what we read in the books is not what actually is done. There is a little bit more background. There is a lot of politics. There is how do you maneuver through this politics in structuring? Sometimes what is said in prescriptively, and that's why when you read the McKinsey reports, you now look at what Leading Board Africa is coming up with what ICGU is coming up with. We have in Africa, for instance, TBR in Ghana for listed companies. There are ways through which they are saying, okay, how do we bring teams together? So the approach of recruiting a board member should also take a diverse, purposeful, well-intentioned approach. And that, I think, in my view, we should be in position to also make sure that the biases that people have, especially the unconscious biases, which come with affinity, confirmation seeking, anchoring, and ability to take some halo effect, overemphasizing single positive traits of individuals. So there is a cocktail of how we need to embrace, and that requires a senior board member. And that senior board member, both in terms of age and experience, is extremely important for them to sieve and see what is important and what is not important. Who is trying to make this board member out? Because there are people who come with an objective of actually they want to eliminate a particular board member in the meeting, and this board member's views will not be accommodated. Therefore, the chairman, for me, I still insist, the chairman is a chairman of all board members, is not a chairman of particular board individuals. I submit, and I think we will have and tackle this. I was really charged about this gender equality and patriarchal society of diversity of male, female, and women together, and giving some ways through which we can get them involved. Because what I see is that there is a direction and a purposeful approach of how we need to gain representation, inclusion, and equity. I thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Bernard, for sharing those, and, very passionately. So we can tell that you're very passionate about what it is that we are talking about, pointing out the role that the chairman plays on the whole board of directors, having to recognize that definitely you talked about depth, that every board member comes with a level of depth because they've been vetted, hopefully, and they're bringing something to the table, and they understand the role that they're playing and the power that they have. So the chairman is key. But of course, I also recognize that boards need to appreciate that the responsibility that they have is all of them together as one. It's not just the chairman. Even when you talked about someone saying, no, for me, I want it to be minuted, that this was my opinion. At the end of the day, it is collective responsibility as a board of directors. So as you said, might as well listen to one another, might as well appreciate the proficiencies of one another, so that when a management comes with a recommendation, or when there's a solution that is needed, or when there's an emergency, or there's a crisis, it is collective ownership. But because of the different experience that they have, the different ideas that they have, and of course, they're all looking into ensuring that the purpose of the organization is met. So once this is understood, then you know that having divergent views is actually healthy and good for a board of directors, so that they can look at the issue collectively, but from different insights, from different angles. And then once they say this is the way we are going, they have really looked at everything and what could go wrong and what could go right. So thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. So we're talking now internal, those are the internal pressures sometimes of the opinions, but there are also external pressures. There are investor demands, there's the regulator requirements. You talked about that. Some of these industries are very highly regulated, for example, the commercial banks and all that. So this really, how does this play into shaping, that whole diversity, those different external pressures? How should boards respond to these pressures while maintaining that strategic direction, even if they are diverse? So just a minute or two, what do you have to share with us on that particular one?
Okay, thank you very much for recognizing that. And indeed, in a regulated environment, there is need for conformance. How do you meet the expectations of the regulator, especially if it is a central bank, if it is a listed company, if it is to do with a board of medical practitioners? There are specific things that need to be put in place. For instance, recently, I see that the central bank is coming up with guidelines on the cyber security. It may necessitate them to say that a specific board member should be qualified to have, should be a member of the board and risk management committee. So that means that we need to look and make sure we comply with that, because the cost of compliance is the cost of the license, losing the license. So we have, but however, what I also see that some of the most evolutionary approach that is coming to bear is sometimes there is a rush by the regulators to bring up an issue, and once you go into dialogue, and probably they can give you time lag for implementation, which I think is good. So there is need to have a healthy discussion with the regulators, so that we bring to bear to them, especially in terms of compliance dates, especially in terms of time, structuring, especially where you have matrix requirements and what you would call probably group dynamics. How do you bring them together to make sure that there's this structure? Can we create a hybrid approach, and that hybrid approach can work? Yeah, it's one of the elements that probably we need to give a deep thought, but also this requires engagement. You could as well need what they call a super board member, one who can navigate, who looks at the board as a business. You must have that person who has exceptional negotiation skills in trying to navigate the most difficult terrains in particular situations. And when you bring that to a local or East African context, for instance, we have had challenges before for NMG, for instance, and its interest in Uganda. And the way they went about it, they needed to have a very diverse and experienced chairman then, who navigated the terrain in quite a good way by ensuring compliance of all stakeholders, and at the same time also looking out the compliance of the borders, the ultimate shareholders, because for them, they are looking at the yield, they are looking at the return on capital. They want to make sure that the cost is kept at bay. At the same time, the productivity is moving in the right direction, and the return on assets, return on equity. How do you put all this together? It may require a combination of skills, and each of these board members may not have all those skills, but as you said, collectively, we can all win. And that is the spirit that we need to be putting across, and having a very good discourse, and most importantly, a respect for each other, and respect for the way backgrounds can shape the board and the respective members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard, for looking at the pressures inside, as we talked about opinions and everything, but also the pressures that come from outside, and how we can be able to ensure that even with the pressures, they understand that the diversity really plays a very key role, and how to go about those pressures, but also being able to interface and engage with them to bring to their attention the value that diversity brings on board. So I'm very mindful of the time, but Max, I would like to ask you to take this one. So Max, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Confirm
Okay.
You can hear me. It's raining heavily where I am.
Oh, okay. No worries. We can definitely hear you. So there's this, the question is, what exactly is tokenism, and what are the key elements that make diversity impactful rather than just checkbox? I think Samuel raised this issue of it can be ticking a box, and even Dennis spoke to it. So what is it? Just share with us, how do we make diversity impactful? And why I'm asking you this question is because you gave us an example. You are the board secretary, of course, at BRAC Uganda Bank, and you have that diverse board. So how do we ensure that, you have the diversity, you brought it on board, but to ensure that it is actually impactful and we are seeing the results, so that we can speak and say, yes, this is important?
Right, thank you, Caroline. Kindly allow me to stay off video for now, because my fiber internet is off because of the heavy downfall.
No, sure.
How tokenism basically is about what the other panelists have been talking about. Specifically, Hajat Sebiara was talking about the politics, even when it comes to diversity, especially for the public entities. How yellow are you? How red are you? How blue are you? So it's basically a box ticking exercise. So tokenism really occurs when the organizations now start making those superficial efforts just to appear inclusive by adding a minimal number of underrepresented individuals to their boards or leadership teams, but without genuinely integrating their perspectives or ensuring that they actually have a real influence. And some of the signs of tokenism in organizations, you'll find the presence of a small number of diverse members who are not really given meaningful roles or responsibilities, or a voice, most importantly, in decision-making processes. Because don't forget what Dennis emphasized about the power of the board, diversity speaking to the power of the board, being able to make those decisions. So in tokenism, you find that it's just a small group that is there for the purpose of box ticking. And so their presence is more about optics rather than a genuine commitment to diversity. And if you can allow me to use my employer again, I'm fortunate to work with an employer that has emphasize diversity and inclusion from the place of gender now, specifically, where we are operating 160 locations across the country in different districts, over 80 districts in Uganda, and serving clients at the bottom of the pyramid. And you find that out of 180,001 borrowers, 181,000 borrowers, we have 93% who are women. We have 1,900 staff and 82% are women. You have 81 leaders and 64% are women leaders, because that's the bank's focus. And we usually say that we don't just talk impact, we breathe, we live impact. So what differentiates true diversity from tokenism, from where I sit, is one, that inclusive leadership and the culture, that there is need for empowerment. For us to have impactful diversity, board members from the diverse backgrounds must be empowered to contribute to their perspectives meaningfully, so that they are not just there to tick boxes, but rather they are contributing their perspectives meaningfully, so that we foster a culture where all voices are heard and they are also valued. But also, too, that there is representation across the multiple dimensions, that it's beyond the numbers. True diversity should go beyond merely having the diverse members on the board. It should be about ensuring representation across multiple dimensions, whether it be gender, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's age, whether it's professional background and expertise. Each of these backgrounds should be able to contribute to the board's effectiveness, but also being able to inculcate that integration into our decision making, like we've talked about genuine influence, that how impactful are our decisions. So this means that the diverse board members should have the authority, they should have the opportunity to shape the company's strategy, rather than merely being present at the table. And let's have clear objectives and metrics, so that we are able to move beyond tokenism. Let organizations set clear diversity objectives, but measure progress against them, so that we're able to track the impact of diversity on board decisions on the overall company performance. As Dennis emphasized, the need for diversity to speak to the profitability, to speak to shareholder value. So at the end of the day, if we are tracking, we should be able to say, ever since we diversified our board, what has been the real impact on our board decisions, and those board decisions ultimately on the overall company performance. So that we have long-term commitment, because I believe genuine diversity should not be a one-time effort, but should be a continuous commitment to building and maintaining a diverse board. And this will involve succession planning. Bernard has already spoken to the role of the board chair, the role of the nominations committee. So in succession planning, in mentoring, not just from the board, but also cascaded downwards to the management team, to the staff, so that we're able to develop a pipeline of diverse talent for future board roles. That's what I would say, Karen. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Max, and especially because you are speaking from that experience that you have with BRAC Uganda. When you gave us the numbers, you know, the guys at the ladies at the bottom of the pyramid, I know you focus on the women and the 93% being taken over. I noticed that the percentages are higher, you know, for the female, even as far as management and the staff are concerned. But one thing that then, as I spoke about purpose, I just picked up that it still fits into your purpose because of who your focus clientele is. So it really, you know, comes out through the different structures that you have. So that is really insightful as you have shared. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like at this juncture to definitely say thank you very much to our panelists, our keynote speaker, Dennis. And now I would like to save some time for our dear audience that has taken the time to be here with us. There have been some comments in the chat, and I will read them quickly so that we can then leave some time for further discussion, some questions, and some insights for those who who have them. So I would like to say here I see Mr. Geoffrey Chihuguru, who is actually the president of the Institute of Corporate Governance Uganda. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here with us. And he's shared some comments. I'll read them. He's saying, while the issue of board composition and experience has been addressed to a great extent in the private sector, this problem we need to address is how to change the policy in public entities. This is particularly necessary because the decisions and actions of the public entities affect the health of the country. Very well said, Geoffrey, and indeed, the public sector needs to glean really from the private sector. And even Hajat was pointing out the challenges that the public sector faces. So thank you very much for that. And any of our panelists, you'll speak a bit more into this, but let me just read the other comments that are in. Edith says, Dennis shared a very interesting scenario that it is now common practice for the CEO to also dub as the chairman. I'm very curious to know how the domineering personalities have been handled in such scenarios. It may seem like these are above the law and no one can bring them to book. How does this work? So as we take these comments, I would like each one of you, to just speak which area you'd like to speak into, any of the panelists, and Dennis, our keynote. So Coach Samuel made a comment as well. Indeed, at the end of the day, it is collective responsibility. If we agree on a direction to take as a board, all of us members have to bind ourselves to that position. He says, that said, collective responsibility can at times be well-packaged term for dictatorship of the wrong majority. Many people may agree on something wrong and call it right. That is why in parliamentary politics, there's a place for the minority report. Maybe that is why board decisions should be taken after extensive discussion where all members are listened to, of course, based on the nature of the board business on the agenda. Then he goes further to comment on what Edith said as well, and they are having a conversation right there. We can see it in there. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to call you let's raise some electronic hands if we have would like to talk into something or make a comment into what has been said. But I also see here that Mr. Dyson Okumu, that is the CEO of ICGU, would like to make a comment. Dyson, are you there? Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Thank you very much, Carol. Mine is, okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Dyson Okumu. I'm the CEO of the Institute of Corporate Governance of Uganda. Mine is actually very important. Let me start by thank you very much, Doctor. I'm very happy that you gave us an expose. I'm also happy that you are working in the Gambia. I worked in the Gambia before, and I know the country very well. Let me thank my president, Mr. Geoffrey Chihuguru, and all council members, Carol, Hajat, Bernard, for attending this. My comment is that the first sentence which Dr. Dennis made is very, very pertinent, that the corporate governance is the most important non-financial dynamics in our society. So the concept of corporate governance must be propagated, it must be promoted and deepened in our society.
You're breaking up.
We have, of course, about 4 kinds of organizations. Carol, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're breaking up a bit. You're breaking breaking up. Yes, yes, but we're trying to catch what we can.
Can you listen to me now?
Yeah.
Hello, am I clear now?
Yes, that sounds much better.
Yeah. So I was saying the concept of corporate governance must be propagated, promoted, and deepened in our economy. Four sectors.
Your network, Dyson.
Which is the concept clearly. Then the state-owned entity was saying mainly. Hello?
Yeah, you're really breaking up. Could we give you a moment to maybe change network or something? Because we're really missing what you have
Yeah, there's
to
no
say.
power. There's no power.
Oh, the no power. Dennis
The problem is, as
that.
Dennis said, there's no.
Yes, this is Uganda. This is Uganda. You know.
Power has gone on.
Yeah.
I think you can give the chance. So by saying, okay, I will just write my comments on the chat.
Oh, okay, okay. I think let's do that. Let's do that.
Caroline, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that many people have.
ICGU. Hello.
Dennis, we can take your. I mean, Dyson, we can take your comments in the chat, so that we can.
Yeah, I will just write it on the chat.
Yeah, please write on the chat. That would be very helpful.
Okay, let me do that. By the way, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you too. Thank you very much. Okay. Yes, Dennis, you are saying?
One of the reasons I'm extremely proud of being Ugandan is that many people don't realize how institutionalized our country is. We also tend to forget that our country went through a traumatic experience between 1972 and forward, where there was a large number of Ugandans that were kicked out of Uganda. The Asians who were born in Uganda were kicked out of Uganda, and there was a certain seismic shift where Kenya suddenly became one of the world's largest exporters of Arabica coffee because that coffee was being smuggled from Uganda into Kenya. My point is this: despite all the challenges we have had, Ugandans are the world's most entrepreneurial nation. By far, we are 2 times more entrepreneurial than the people in the Philippines and the people in Thailand. What that means is that Ugandans are opening up businesses on a regular basis and employing people. Many of these succeed, but an even bigger number fail because of the ecosystem. And the ecosystem that Geoffrey Chihuguru was talking about, whereby the public entities play a big role or a bigger role and affect people's lives than the private sector entities, is actually a very fertile dynamic for the private sector entities to advocate for a specific change. In other words, I understand how difficult it is because many of us want to be on a board because there are privileges, there are direct, tangible benefits, there's the prestige that comes from being on the board of the oil corporation or things like that. There are so many opportunities there. But we have to put pressure on the government, especially because they're interested parties. What is very interesting is that the government of Uganda has not come out with a solid policy paper on diversity at board level. But the diversity at board level could come if we, as the private sector, actually designed diversity strategies and attached them to our overall plan. If there was a strategy for diversity at the company level, it would help. I wanted to slightly actually augment what Robinson Bernard Magulu said. which is at the NGO level, it's slightly different from what happens at the government or the private sector level. But I also want to say the reality is when we look at corporate governance for what it is, we need to throw away the elements of corporate governance and look at why we have an NGO, why we have a government entity, why we have a firm. These are just modalities. They are just legal entities with which we can own or manage property, or manage an entity, or manage a service. We then also need to remember that these are the most effective ways within which we can manage domestic or international economic relations. So if Africans or Ugandans are creating companies and that they are the most entrepreneurial nation, it means we have the fabric. It means we have the capacity to do this. In fact, if each of us, there are now 39 people on this call, if the 39 people belong to 39 organizations and they designed diversity strategies or diversity strategies associated with company growth, that will change government. Because the line between government and private sector in Uganda is very thin. Many of us benefit from the government. Many of us associate with the government. Many of us went to school with people who run government entities. We can influence them in one generation. That's the courage. The last thing I want to say, it's when we go back to the things that Max said, with the things that Hajat said, basically talking about the colors and the decision-making, and also what Bernard was talking about, basically the overall management, the board chairperson. Let me say it from a very simple perspective, and I want to say again what I said. Power is nothing without control. The board chairman can be a great board chairman, but a board chairman is greater and more important if the board he leads is actually an impactful board. The board chairman is not powerful if he can actually not control things, which then brings me to the very heart of the matter and what LBA is doing right now. The training that we are doing to focus on the behavioral skill set, to help with helping people persuade, to help with conflict resolution is so fundamental because Uganda's culture is not necessarily the traditional culture of corporate governance. There are unique elements here, but I want to say that if Uganda is already entrepreneurial, it means we already have the essence of corporate governance. And all we have to do is to make it deliberate. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Dennis. I don't even want to water down what it is that you have given unto us, but also what you just said. Thank you so, so much. I'm very, very mindful of the time. We're 10 minutes over. So I would like to take this opportunity just to give my panelists just a minute for them to just give us their closing words on this subject before we can really do a complete wrap-up. So I'll kindly request the audience just to give me about 5 minutes because they'll each use a minute. So Hajat, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Caroline. It's been very interesting. I just want to echo this, which we all know, we echo every day, that culture is strategy for breakfast. We at boards are about strategy. And if we don't change culture, then that culture is going to eat our strategy and will not be to anything. The key thing that I see in the board diversity and the challenge is the way that our boards are recruited, because it is through reference, it is through headhunting mainly. And when you do headhunting, when you do through reference, Hajat will pick on a person who is like Hajat. So there will be like a friend, a colleague, a age mate. So there will be no diversity. So we need to change the way boards are recruited. We can have committees. We can have like a Institute of Corporate Governance. set up a committee to do the recruitment of boards where they would look at quality, diversity, and all that. So that is my closing remark. I thank you so much for having me on this panel. And I just wanted to say very, very briefly, I thought about ethnicity in Uganda, where we have 56 tribes. And I'm just trying to see how we can have diversity around that area with all the 56 and yet limited the number of boards. I thank you so much, and may God bless all of you. Thank you for listening to us this morning or this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Hajat, for that. And indeed, how we recruit, how we onboard the boards really speaks a lot into this issue of diversity and interesting 56 cultural backgrounds in Uganda. How does that impact when we are choosing the boards that we are choosing? Is it an area that we also need to look at and maybe focus on, depending on the purpose of the organization and the enterprise that we are recruiting the board for? Very interesting things to be thinking about. Yes, Bernard, you have a minute.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Of course, this is a discussion that you can go over. It's very interesting, and the best way to appreciate it even more is every time you are in a board and you are seeing experience after experience. That's how I can say it. You learn on a daily basis. You become a student of practical learning. And one of the things that nobody will tell you, people shy away to tell you, there is body politics. It is deeply rooted. And the most important way is how do you make yourself not apolitical, but you somehow work as part of the board to deliver a same message. It remains extremely diverse, but it is important. I would conclude by saying that the fundamental responsibility of the board of directors is to make decisions. And significant change, especially in the emerging situations of volatility, has become almost in every sector that we engage in. So it has been seen, and it continues to be more critical, that the board has to have a diverse mix of board members across gender, age, sector, background, ethnic background, profession, customer demographics. It will help and optimize and have a very good board. And at the end of it all, facilitate grounded decision making. And this is what McKinsey, in his most recent report, February 2024, illuminates that a positive correlation between diverse leadership and financial success, making a paradigm shift for companies, organizations, the way they approach and make commitment to diversity. Diversity should not just be spoken about, but it should be illuminated. It should be in blood. There must be a purpose, and that purpose must start from the top. When the top means what? Those who have the power to say yes or no are the owners of the company. Our challenge is how do we go into their mindset and we change their way of thinking to embrace what is going on. The only way to do it is what Leading Board Africa and what ICGU is doing, so that we bring them on board, they become exposed. It is that exposure that will give them the opportunity, especially where you have family businesses and family businesses that are very powerful. You need to get them to, and they have to constitute a board. How do you avoid the old boy, old girl syndrome? How do you avoid those kind of things and appoint board members with merit? It still remains a nexus. It still remains asymptomatic. It still remains an area that we need to keep reflecting about. I thank you, colleagues. I thank you, Dennis, and the members in the gallery. You have been awesome. I thank you so much for Caroline and the rest of the panelists. This was very purposeful, it's impactful, and we look forward for very more dynamic. I think we should also be looking at politics in the board as one of the topic or areas, because it's what kills strategy for breakfast as well. I thank you.
For those last insights, and definitely this is a conversation that we need to take further. We are gleaming into these different areas, but it's a very important conversation, so thank you very much for that. Max, are you with us?
Yes, I am, and I'm now in the light.
Max, are you here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, looks like Max might. Indeed, we have come to the end. Oh, it must be his internet that is, when it rains in Uganda, the electricity is shut off. Never, I think I understand it, but on the other side, I just don't get it. As soon as the wind, shows that it's shifting, I always believe someone goes and touches just that one button and most areas are off, but, it is what it is. Yes, Max, you could
Carol,
try
can you
now.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You have a minute. It's lunchtime. We're standing between lunch,
All right.
so 1 minute.
Thank you. Sorry about the internet. My parting shot is the need to enhance diversity on boards will start with us embracing intentionality, because diversity doesn't happen by accident. It requires a deliberate strategic effort. And like CPA Bernard has spoken, this is part of our intentionality. When ICGU and Leading Boards Africa are having such a webinar and the participants that are on call, this is part of our intentionality. So let's establish specific measurable objectives for board diversity. We integrate these goals into the board's overall governance strategy, and we regularly track progress and hold the board accountable for achieving these targets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Max. Yes, in the chat, I'll take what is in the chat, because our participants are really giving their comments as well before they leave. So I'll look at the ones who haven't, who have given their comments for the first time. So Mary Kasami says, this has been so insightful. Thank you very much, Dennis, and the panel. And Nina says, thank you to the panel. And then, of course, Coach Samuel is saying, thank you, Dennis, CPA Robson Hadget, well done. Thank you, Caroline, for being a guest host. Thank you very much for that. And he's saying quite a bit more. And so we also have, let me just see, Daisy Asimwe says, thank you, Caroline, for your excellent moderation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dennis, and the esteemed panelists for sharing your experience and your wisdom. Coach Samuel still giving his comments. Josephine is saying, well moderated, Caroline. Thank you very much. Nolu Thando is saying, I'm glad that I came across this webinar on LinkedIn. It has been very insightful. Thanks to the hosts and to the panel. You're very welcome. Hope says, very insightful meeting. Thank you. Lillian was letting me know that Max was here. Coach Samuel is laughing about the electricity. Well, it is what it is. Then Ruth says, I appreciate this insightful engagement, quite a lot to learn. Thank you, LBA, for organizing the webinar. David says, thank you, Dennis Matanda and the esteemed panelists for sharing your experience. Caroline for moderating. Harriet is saying, well done to all the speakers, especially guest speaker and the excellent moderator. Thank you very much. Lillian saying, great discussion. Thank you all. So I would like to say thank you very much to each and everybody, and especially to ICGU and Leading Boards Africa for really putting this together. And we really are looking forward to having many more of these, but even having those in person, because we all know that when we're in the same room together, the way we share ideas, even the networking on these different things that are very passionate to us, but very pertinent to our country, to our economy, to our businesses, to our young entrepreneurs. It is really, really key. And so I would like to say thank you to everyone for taking the time to attend. Without you, it wouldn't have been what it has been. So thank you again, our guest speaker, Dennis. It's been wonderful. Thank you to our panelists, Hajat, Max, and Bernard. And we look forward to having this continued conversation. Thank you to all those who have attended. Geoffrey, I see you there. He's been with us till the end, the president of ICGU. So thank you very much, everybody, and have yourselves a good afternoon, good evening. I don't know if it's about good morning, wherever you are, but it's really been great. I've been your moderator and host, Caroline Egesa, and I hope to see you again. Thank you very much, and stay well and stay blessed.
Thank you.
Caroline, can the moderators have a photo? Can we switch on our cameras as moderators and we get a photo, please?
Yes, we can. I always love Hajat for that. I mean, she's been here. Why not take the evidence with her, to the different social media platforms and say, yes, we had this and we were all there. So yes, Hajat, we can
Are they
do
on?
that.
Is Bernard,
Yes.
How about the keynote? Is he there?
Yes, Dennis is here.
There.
Yeah, can we all switch on our cameras? Carol, can you do the photo? Because the camera I have today is a challenging one. Who can do the photo, please?
Max, can you do it? I'm not very...
No, I'm using my phone now. I may not.
But Ruthia can do it, isn't it?
Ruth.
I'm also using my phone, but I can take a screenshot with the phone. If that's okay.
Interesting. So long as we have the evidence. Have you done it?
Yes, I took one, two.
I'll take another one in case it doesn't come out well.
Yeah, I like the risk management Mama does is excellent.
Done.
Okay, all right. Thank you very, very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Nice meeting you, moderator. Moderator, and then the keynote. Max,
yes, it was
you,
nice
so
meeting
much.
everybody. All right, thank you.
Thank you, team. Thank you.
Thank you.